How y'all doing out there? How y'all doing? Frankie Russo, pre-show number 83. America's Team today. You got to join America's Team and get a t-shirt. RussoNation.tv. You got to do this. I got some things I'm working on with America's Team. I'm hopefully by next week I'll be able to talk about it. But I'm working on some things with this thing. This American Team is going to be a cool thing. You got to join it. Join America's Team and get a t-shirt, okay? Cool. All right, so this is the Frankie Russo pre-show. Pope is around. Yo, I'm a Catholic Christian dude, Eucharistic minister. I ain't down with this Pope, man. It's too liberal for me, you know. In all due respect. You know, I'm just not down with it. They should have been talking about Planned Parenthood, the funding plan. All he should be talking about was the funding Planned Parenthood. That's it. That's all he should be talking about. That's one thing. Taking baby parts, these late-term abortions. It's unconscionable. These are the things we should be focusing on as Christians. Unbelievable. That, and then we got this, the economy, which I believe, I know I say it every week, and I've been focusing on September or October. I believe it's very tenuous. And the collapse of with all this global debt of $200 trillion, crazy stuff. So I believe, besides the collapse of the United States economy due to this global debt of over $200 trillion, we got 18 trillion in the can. They stopped counting it. It's frozen. So besides all that, I believe the biggest threat to our way of life, besides the implosion of the United States dollar, this global economy, is a wealthy Iran with nuclear capability. Crazy stuff. And, I talk about it every week because we got to keep the eye on the prize. And what I do is each week I keep adding pieces to the puzzle. And I believe it's statistically significant. It's my belief. Court papers, judges' decisions, it don't lie. At 11:55 at night, getting ready to pop off at 106 live here at 77 WABC. So I'm going to go to my whiteboard, but let me just do a little stuff to you. Let me. Washington Beacon reports by Ali Meyer. Investigation of collusion between terrorists and Mexican cartels is a threat to the United States. Okay? Muslim terrorists are using Mexican drug cartels to infiltrate the U.S. southern border to plan attacks on the United States from within. According to this article, and it quotes Judicial Watch, which we know is statistically significant data. They are an amazing group. What they've done through the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, the information that they've garnered for us people, has been amazing. So I'm sure you all would agree. Mexico, according to the Judicial Watch, this is the Washington Free Beacon article by Ali Meyer. Mexican drug cartels are smuggling foreigners from countries with terrorist links into a small Texas rural town near El Paso. And they're using remote farm roads rather than interstates to elude the Border Patrol and other law enforcement barriers. Interesting. A little sidebar. This ties into Guess what? My whiteboard. I bought a big one the other day. I don't know if I'm gonna bring it here. Three 3 feet by 4 feet, yo. That thing, it's crazy. But this is my small one. Fraudulent selective service card, Barack Obama, legal president, statistically significant, Sheriff Joe and Nicole Posse investigation, Clinton Foundation. We got Russia right in the mix with this. Iran Global Terror Network, $105,000 going to the Clinton Foundation, 1.4 over 1.4 million going to the Blind Cheeks Mosque. Obama turned a blind eye to that. And now we got in the Blind Cheeks Mosque of Muhammad al-Nooni. We got Musa Abu of Marzouk. And we got the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, 9/11 attacks, Holy Land Foundation trial, 650 Fifth Avenue case, money laundering, Hamas financing, and bombing of American buildings and killing thousands of Americans. Unconscionable. Iran's all behind it. We talked about this every week. District courts ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. Damages that Iran has to pay, $6 billion with the 9/11 attacks. And then we got this, see, because I believe that this Mohammed al-Mawad from the Yemen Sheikh that was involved in sending millions of dollars to Al-Qaeda and Hamas, I believe that's the model for Obama. That's Obama. See, Obama became president, Barack H. Obama, right? Is Christian, the Christian. We know he's not a Christian. He's a Muslim from Indonesia. It's the fact that he's lied about who he is. We don't even know who this dude is. I'm not even going to go there with the birth certificate because that's where they want us to go because they got pushback on that. And they got the Senate Resolution 511. We talk about this every week. And then because I got this, there's a pattern here. There's a pattern. Then we got the release of the 5 Quds Force leaders in the Erbil, Iraq. They were detained in 2007, these 5 Quds Force leaders. And when Obama took over, he released them in 2009, mysteriously. Then we found out, I'm going to add to this thing now, the Global Terror Network. As you know, we got Iranian surrogates, CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations, Alevi Foundation, which is part of 650 Fifth Avenue building case. CARE is part of the Holy Land Foundation trial. ASA Corporation is 650 Fifth Avenue. ISNA, Islamic Society North America, Holy Land Foundation. We got Bank Melli of Iran, they're part of the 650 Fifth Avenue money laundering case. And then we got NAIT, North American Islamic Trust. We spoke about that with the Paul Sperry article in reference to the Chattanooga mosque, which was involved with the killing of the unfortunate killing of the 5 Marines most recently. And the NAIT is part of the terror financing of these mosques. They funded between 300 to 500 mosques. And these entities are allowed to operate with the United States jurisdiction, though they've been part of all these terrorist attacks, these terror financing schemes. They've allowed them to exist in the United States jurisdiction. And one came to fruition was the NAIT and the Chattanooga shootings. Crazy stuff. That's why Michelle Bachmann, she's a former congresswoman, and she introduced House Bill H.R. 5194, H.R. 5194, which deemed Muslim Brotherhood as a FTO, foreign terrorist organization, and anybody affiliated with Muslim Brotherhood would have to be deported with these cats. Crazy stuff. And what happened was, and this bill, which would have been a great bill to put into place, we would see who's who and what's what, right? It went right into the subcommittee. She's not there no more, right to subcommittee. I guess that's why Broner Brainer is resigning. Crazy stuff over there. So to keep this moving, we got the bomber turned a blind eye to this 1.4 million go to the Blind Sheik, 105 going to the Clinton Foundation. Bomber's part of this. In my world, either this is a co-presidency with Obama and the Clintons. Obama's the president. He's just as culpable as the Clintons. Then we got the release of the 5 cut force leads. We spoke about that. Then we got the Bergdahl trade, which ended up going to Qatar, right? And we found that there's a Qatar, a terrorist. Qatar is being deemed by all of the. Last week we read the Washington Free Beacon article where there's a big problem over there. One of the committee members from the Senate Affairs Committee wrote a letter to the president saying he's very concerned about the radical terrorists that are being. Qatar's becoming a safe haven for radical terrorists, as well, radical Islamists, as well as they're financing this gentleman that was in the. I'll get his name off the article. Gentleman from Qatar. I'll get it in a minute, because I just want to say that $5 billion went from the global terror network to, or $5 billion. Obama sent the when this Bergdahl trade. I just wanted to add to this because I didn't mention it last week. $5 billion, according to Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer on the Bill O'Reilly show. Obama sent $5 billion plus 5 Afghan Taliban terrorists from Gitmo, exchange for a trader. They did that. Why do you think they did that? Why do you think? Bergdahl's perfect. Everybody's talking about Bergdahl. Nobody's talking about the 5 Afghan Taliban release. Nobody's talking about that. So I'm going to get into this in a minute. I'm going to look for that Qatar article because I want to just throw that guy's name in the mix. I just wanted to show this to you. I'm going to get to the waiver under the national security and Hamas and human aid that Obama sent to Hamas, which is a terrorist entity. He waived the federal statutes, and then we got Benghazi, ISIS, the ISIS problem. HR 5194 we mentioned. The Corker bill we'll talk about later. Okay, good. So I got through most of this. The stuff I went through last week. But what I wanted to show was the 5 cut force leaders, right? Because what happened was in 2011, to get back to this investigation collusion between terrorists and Mexican cartels and is a threat to the United States, one incident did happen. In 2011, there was an Iranian American that got in contact with one of the Quds force leaders out in the southern border, and they were able to solicit one of these Mexican drug cartels, and they gave the Mexican drug cartels $100,000 to come over to America and assassinate the Saudi ambassador to the United States. It was a big thing. FBI surveillance, FBI investigation. They had all the phone conversations, body wires, all this stuff. They had them all on tape. The Quds force leaders. I don't think they had General Soleimani, the commander of the Quds force, but they had 4 to 5 Quds force leaders, and one in particular. And what happened was, Preet Bharara, the assistant district attorney of the Southern District, busted the Iranian American at the JFK because he was getting ready to fly to Mexico. And so that's an example of crossing the border, terrorists crossing the border, using the Mexican drug cartel to actually, according to Judge Napolitano, perform an act of war. Now, according to Judge Napolitano, because it was stopped, it's a criminal act. If it wasn't stopped, it would have been an act of war. Crazy stuff. All the Iranians in America here, some of the Iranians were denying that the Iranian government knew about it, which I don't believe. This is the way the Iranians move, by the way. This is how they do. So, interesting. So then, we got that one. So then, here's one. Because basically, what I'm showing here with this whiteboard is that I got hundreds of millions of dollars going from Obama to the Global Terror Network waives the federal statutes, because you can't, under federal law, the federal statutes, you you can't give United States tax dollars to terrorist entities. So the president has like presidential, they call it authorization waiver under national security, authorization waiver under humanitarian aid to send money to the Palestinian Authority government, Hamas. He sent hundreds of millions of dollars there. So once again, he's doing what we've been saying, right? Excuse me. So Obama waives that. An authorization waiver. He waives under national security, under humanitarian aid, and he sends hundreds of millions of dollars to Hamas. So here's the question I have, and I've been asking this question, I'm trying to find the answer. Is Obama, because I believe Obama is really the shore of Iran, he's playing the shore of Iran right now. Everything he's done so far is in favor of Iran. I've read a lot. I'm going to get to some of the articles about, with Syria and Russia and the whole thing. But the truth be told, he's given hundreds of millions of dollars to Hamas. And then I found out through the Washington Free Beacon article that Iran sending tens of millions of dollars to Hamas, and rockets too. So they're an Iranian surrogate. So the question is, by Obama sending hundreds of millions of dollars under humanitarian aid to the Palestinian Authority government, under the national security, is Obama actually enabling Iran to get around the sanctions and giving them money? Is he bribing them, right? Is he bribing them? Bribery? I don't know. It's crazy stuff, because when you look at this whiteboard, there's letters too. I'm going to get into some of the letters. But this whiteboard is it's statistically significant. We got the Benghazi cover-up, and in all intents and purposes, it's Iran. And we talked about it last week. So Obama, it was a video, it was Al-Qaeda. It's Iran. So what we have here is, I don't have, I'm going to go over some of the letters. I'm going to go over some of the stuff Obama sent the Ayatollah in 2009 and 2014. According to the article, Obama sent the Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran 4 letters. So I thought that was interesting. Now, what I find really interesting, to give you an idea, there was rumors about, right, with Benghazi, right? Just for clarification on Benghazi, I just want everybody to understand what went down on Benghazi. Now, with Benghazi, it wasn't a video, it wasn't Al-Qaeda. According to Kenneth Timmerman and all of the other articles that I've looked at and read, the cover-up is Iran. Okay? Why do you say that, Frankie Russo? I have statistically significant data. Washington Free Beacon, Congressional Research Service, right? I don't have a picture of Barack Obama. I say this every week. I have a picture of Barack Obama on a photo ID, says Muslim Brotherhood member on the top. I don't have that. I don't have a picture of Barack Obama hanging out with hanging around with Omar al-Bashir from Sudan, who's Muslim Brotherhood, one of the Muslim Brotherhood leaders. I don't know, pictures like that, or Obama sending a letter to Omar al-Bashir out in Sudan saying, I'm going to support the radical Islamists, or anything like that. We have a stealth jihad Muslim Brotherhood operative, Muslim from Indonesia, radical Islamists in the White House. Truth be told, and he plays the game very well. So here's the situation: they get the documentation, and it's not a video, it's not Al Qaeda, it's Iran. What happened was, understand something to give you the backdrop. Kenneth Tillman has revealed that Iran and the Washington Free Beacon and the Congressional Research Service, which was part of the Washington Free Beacon article, that Iran gives Syria between 3.5 billion to 15 billion. So quite frankly, Syria is a front for Iran. I'm trying to figure out what they're fronting. Maybe they're fronting nuclear weapons. I don't know. I still believe the Lee Smith article is statistically significant on why Iran already has the bomb, and with North Korea still in the mix in some way. But Syria, with Russia going there with a military base and all this, weapons going to Syria, Iran sending all this money to Syria, something's going on over there, obviously. But so Iran's got a big stake with the Assad regime. It came to General Soleimani that the Americans from Libya, right, from the Gaddafi, the revolution in Libya, the Fugazi thing that Obama did, getting rid of Gaddafi, which, according to all the experts that I heard, Gaddafi wasn't posing any threat to American interests, any threats to the American security interests. So I don't know why we went through all that situation with Libya, but the truth be told, there was an overthrow of Gaddafi, and there were these air surface missiles. And we were trying to get these air surface missiles to the rebels that were fighting Assad. And that's how the Quds Force, General Soleimani and the Quds Force provided money and support. They fronted, this is how they operate. They fronted for the Ansar al-Sharia terrorist group. They totally, through money and support, they trained this group called Ansar al-Sharia. So they were the front for the Iranian Quds Force led by General Soleimani. And that's how they ended up, doing the unfortunate events of killing 4 Americans, including in those 4 Americans was the American ambassador Christopher Stevens. To let you understand, and this is, Kenneth Tillman, tremendous investigative reporter. What I find interesting, the way the Iranians operate. So there was a big rumor about kidnapping Ambassador Christopher Stevens and exchanging him for the blind sheik. So that was this big rumor. Obama wanted to do it, So there was a kidnapping. Kidnapped Iranians freed in Libya. This was during it. The release was October 6, 2012. There was a kidnapping, though, a supposed kidnapping anyway. 7 members of the Iranian Red Crescent were freed in Libya on Saturday after 65 days in captivity. Iran's official Islamic Republic news agency. The hostages were handed over to the Iranian embassy in Tripoli. All 7 were in good health and were returned to Iran, and they were mysteriously released. The Red Crescent members were kidnapped in Benghazi by unknown armed men in July. See, this is like the setup. This is like, a distraction, a subterfuge for what's really going on. what's really going on, it was General Soleimani, the Quds Force, got sniff of America sending weapons to the Syrian rebels that were trying to overthrow the Assad regime. And General Soleimani, money, training, and support on Ansar al-Sharia terrorist group. That was the front group for the Quds Force and General Soleimani. And they attacked Benghazi consulate, and they killed, on the unfortunate killing of the 4 Americans, including Ambassador Christopher Stevens. They were going to take some of those air surface missiles from the Libyan revolution, whatever they did over there, and they were going to give it to the Syrian rebels. So that's certainly a statistically significant possibility. And the fake kidnapping that went on, it was like a subterfuge to what was really going on. The rumor was they were going to kidnap Christopher Stevens and exchange him for the blind sheik. But it came out that they were kidnapped Iranians, and they were released 65 days after Benghazi, October 6th. Benghazi was September 12th. They were kidnapped in July. They were held, and they were mysteriously released. Yeah. Right? Crazy stuff. Just to move this thing forward, what's really interesting is Obama administration moves, here's another article, to block restitution for U.S. terror victims. The Obama administration has intervened in a landmark legal case brought by American victims of Palestinian terrorists, urging the court to limit restitution for victims out of fear that a sizable payout could collapse the Palestinian government. Really? Whose side are you on? The Secretary of State deputy argued in a filing in New York City court that a hefty payout to the victims of Palestinian terror crimes could burden the Palestinian Authority, interfere in the Obama administration's effort to foster peace in the region. The victims are entitled to as much as $650 million from the Palestinian Authority government following the conclusion of a decade-long lawsuit that exposed the Palestinian government's role in supporting and paying for terror attacks in Israel. The administration's intervention in the case has drawn criticism from U.S. lawmakers, etc. While the administration supports the right of terror victims to sue in U.S. courts, it remains particularly concerned about the Palestinian Authority's solvency. Really? Unbelievable. So, just to give you an idea, I talk about it every week. Bill Clinton, October 21st, 1998, had presidential determination 99-1, where he waived in the signing of the 1999 omnibus bill, where within this bill, as you know, these bills are they're very, there's a lot of stuff in it, and it was section 117, according to Kenneth Tillman's article, there was section 117 in that bill, which enabled American citizens to garner some sort of recovery for the damages of the loss of their loved ones in these terrorist attacks. These are horrific events, and it gave the American people some sort of recourse to get something back for the losses of their loved ones. Well, the same day that he signed it, this 1999 omnibus bill, President Bill Clinton waived it under Presidential Determination 99-1 in favor of the terrorist regimes like Iran and other terrorist entities. Crazy stuff. Just to give you an idea how similar the Obama administration is to the Clinton administration. So, yeah, here's an article. The Weekly Standard article by Lee Smith. Interesting and investigative reporter. Editor. He's an editor, senior editor for the Weekly Standard. Obama avoided Syria action to help Iran negotiations. Over the weekend, Washington Post editorial page Fred Haidt argued that Syria may be the most surprising of Obama's foreign policy legacies. Not just that he's presided over a humanitarian and cultural disaster of epic proportions, but that he soothed the American people to feeling no responsibility for the tragedy. Epoch- Epochal proportions, he said. Obama presided over a humanitarian and cultural disaster of epochal proportions. Fred Haidt concludes that Obama managed to convince the American public that doing nothing was the smart and moral policy. The way Obama sees it, the United States causes more problems than it solves, and besides, there wasn't much we can do anyway by backing a bunch, wow, that's crazy, of rebels against Assad and his allies. It's crazy stuff. Fred Haidt goes on to say, on those rare occasions when political pressure or the horrors of Syrian suffering threatened to overwhelm any excuse for inaction, he promised action in statements or White House leaks, training for the opposition, a safe zone on a Turkish border. I mean, once public attention moved on, the plans were abandoned and scaled down to meaningless proportions. So, just another example of the ineptitude of the deceit and the lies that go on with this administration. Okay, here's another one. Interesting now. Here's an interesting one. Earlier this summer, we learned, and the Pentagon's Inspector General is investigating allegations that the intelligence on ISIS was manipulated. Analysts at U.S. Central Command in Florida formally complained to the IG that Inspector General that analysis contradicting the Obama administration's narrative on ISIS was routinely challenged, rewritten, or disregarded. The administration was so eager to sell the story that the campaign against ISIS was going well, much of the intelligence made clear it wasn't. The intelligence was buried. What's really interesting, too, with this whole thing, we had, for example, here's interesting, like I was going to mention, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn and other generals, like General Petraeus, talking about what's really going on. From 2011 to 2013, top Obama administration intelligence officials downplayed and disregarded intelligence on Al-Qaeda and its activities. As President Obama sought to convince the American public that Al-Qaeda was dying. In 2012, as administration officials made their public claims, the briefings they received from the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, included assessments that Al-Qaeda has doubled in strength over preceding 2 years, and a top DIA Director of Intelligence Agency official was told directly to stop producing reports based on documents collected during the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound. And when a member of the U.S. Intelligence Committee sought to investigate these allegations of manipulation, he was misled repeatedly. So the intelligence manipulation is now making headlines. Is not a new scandal, but a broadening of an earlier one. The systematic and willful effort to sell the American people a false narrative about the global jihadist movement and our efforts to defeat it. Unbelievable. So this is just another example of this, the part of the pattern of Obama either turning a blind eye, like to the Blind Sheik's Mosque activities, and taking money from the Clinton Foundation and the Levy Foundation. Levy Foundation giving $105,000 to the Clinton Foundation. The Levy Foundation giving $1.4 million to the Blind Sheik's Mosque. This stuff is crazy. And then you got the 5 Qud force leaders released. You got the Taliban swap. You got the waiver under national security humanitarian aid. All that money going to basically Iran. It's Hamas's Iran. And then you got Benghazi, another major cover-up. And you got ISIS. See, because I believe ISIS is a Sunni militia, and I'm not discarding its capabilities and its strength and its influence. But to me, based on all the data that I've accumulated, the global terror network is Iran and Iran's Iranian surrogates, and it's pretty impressive. Not only does Iran have the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, Quds Force General Soleimani, and Syria Assad, they have CARE, they have Alevi Foundation, ISNA, Assa Corporation, Bank Melli of Iran, NAIT, Al Qaeda Iran, Afghan Taliban Iran, Hezbollah Iran, and Hamas Iran. Iran is the global terror network. So keep ISIS in the mix, keep ISIS in mainstream press, and nobody talks about Iran. That's what I believe. Truth be told, I believe that's statistically significant. So, I don't know. Truth be told, that's what I believe. Okie dokie. So we're going to go, okay, here. Here's another interesting article, Fox News. Russians, Syrians, and Iranians setting up military coordination cell in Baghdad. Exclusive, according to Fox News, Russian, Syrian, and Iranian military commanders have set up a coordination cell in Baghdad in recent days to try to begin working with Iranian-backed Shia militias fighting ISIS. Yeah, right. I don't believe that. I don't know, man. I just don't believe it. Western intelligence sources say the coordination cells includes low-level Russian generals. U.S. officials say it is not clear whether the Iraqi government is involved at the moment. So, in other words, we're taking the side of Assad, Syria, Putin, Russia, and Iran. I don't believe it. Honestly, I'm not saying it. I just don't understand. I think that ISIS is a subterfuge to this whole situation because I don't know. I don't know the reason. I don't know what's really going on in Syria. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm looking at all the articles. I don't know. I haven't found anything yet clear and convincing that I believe is statistically significant between Russia putting military bases in there and weapons in there, and Iran sending money and weapons, and it's crazy stuff, man. Kenneth Tillman says Iraq, the Quds Force has a relationship with the Iraqi banks, and they float currency, and they garner like over $2 billion annually outside of the Iranian thing. It's crazy. It's a lot of stuff going on. Here's an interesting article, something that would float your fancy. Canada declares Iran a terrorist state, closes embassy, and expels Iranian diplomats. While the Obama administration celebrates a deal with Iran, Canada has just officially labeled Iran as an active state sponsor of terror and is in the process of shutting down their embassy in Tehran. I guess we're the only naivety. We're the only right. It's not naive. The Canadian government's decision came as a result of Iran's refusal to comply with United Nations resolutions pertaining to its nuclear program, as well as their increase in military assistance to the regime of the Syrian dictator Assad. So, what's going on over here? Isn't Canada a neighbor? I don't know. Crazy stuff, Here's an interesting article. Washington Free Beacon, Ali Meyer reports U.S. has 10 million more foreign-born residents than entire European Union. It has been reported the United States has 10 million more foreign-born residents than the entire European Union, according to an analysis from the Senate Subcommittee on Immigration and the National Interest. Crazy stuff. Report, U.S. trained Syrian rebels hand over weapons to Al Qaeda. First Chem reports that, this is a National Review article, this is by David French. First Chem reports that the multi-million-dollar effort to train moderate Syrian rebels had yielded only 4 to 5 fighters still in the field. The rest apparently have been routed. Yesterday, however, we learned that the rout was not the only disaster to befall the program. We were also surprised, reportedly portrayed by our allies. quote-unquote allies. Pentagon-trained rebels in Syria are reported to have betrayed their American backers and handed their weapons over to al-Qaeda in Syria immediately after re-entering the country. Fighters with Division 30, the moderate rebel division favored by the United States, surrendered to the al-Qaeda affiliate Jabhat al-Nusra, a raft of sources claimed. Okay, Division 30 was the first faction whose fighters graduated from a U.S.-led training program in Turkey, which aims to forge a force on the ground in Syria to fight ISIS. Yeah, right. I don't know. A statement on Twitter by a man calling himself Tuzini, a member of al-Qaeda's local affiliate. A strong slap for America. The new group from Division 30 that entered yesterday hands over all its weapons to al-Qaeda after being guaranteed a safe passage. They handed over very large amounts of ammunition and medium weaponry and a number of pickups. Now, here's the interesting questions. At this point, it's truly difficult to pinpoint the Obama administration's worst foreign policy debacle. Was it transforming the Western alliance into the aerial strike force for a band of ragtag jihadist militias in Libya, only to watch them turn on us and kill our ambassador and 3 other brave Americans? Or was it agreeing to a deal with Iran that grants the world's leading terrorist state $150 billion stimulus, access to international arms market, access to ballistic missile technology, and a continued path to developing nuclear weapons? Or was it embracing Egyptian's Muslim Brotherhood government, sending it free F-16 fighter jets while stopping arms shipments when an allied Egyptian government deposed the Brotherhood? Or was it the fake declaration of a red line in Syria, followed by a half-hearted attempt at enforcement that would have led to American airstrikes to aid al-Qaeda? Or how about the ineffective air campaign against ISIS, where intelligence analysts have been caught cooking the books to cover up failure? Then, of course, there's the cringe-worthy debacle of the reset button with Russia, followed by Putin's invasion of Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea. Sorry, it's getting late. But anyway, great questions. This is a great article. Report U.S. trained Syrian rebels hand over weapons to al-Qaeda. It's called The Corner. It's by David French, National Review. Great article. Great article. So that's interesting. And that's it for now. We're at, I've been on the air for over a half hour at least. So it's been about 40 minutes or so. I'm going to get ready for the live show. This is the Frankie Russo show. There's a pattern here, and we believe that Obama is becoming Mohammed al-Muwad, who is found guilty of Title 18, Section 2339B of materially supporting terrorists. There's a pattern here. A Yemen sheikh was found guilty in United States District Courts, federal courts, for materially supporting terrorists. And it's very clear. Blind Sheikh's Mosque, we got the release of the 5 Qud Force, Taliban swap, the Hamas financing, sending humanitarian aid and national security, and we got the Benghazi cover-up. This is the beginning of the pattern that we believe is statistically significant. America's Team. Today, you got to join the team, America's Team, and get a t-shirt. RussoNation.tv. You got to check it out, okay? This is the Frankie Russo pre-show number 83. Yeah. See you about a half an hour, 106, Frankie Russo Show live at 77 WABC. Yeah.